Hello everyone, it's JS here again with another series of recaps, and this time it will be for Starladder and I-League Season 2. Most of the team participating in this tournament will be familiar to the fans, with the exception of Team Friends, who are basically the ex-Virtus Pro players after their squad was dropped by VP, and CDEC Youth, which is just another team under the CDEC brand. And as I get the first clip rolling, before I begin, I want to say I was kinda busy yesterday, so I missed a lot of day 1 action, but I've caught up and I'll upload a double episode today just to catch up. Alright, so let's get into the first series, which is Fanatic versus NaVi. We saw this series last week at the Summit 5, and in that tournament, it went 2-1 in the way of NaVi. And in the first game, NaVi openly gave up the Draw Ranger to Fnatic during the draft, and their idea of countering it seems to be push down Fnatic's tower early and end the game before draw lineup can come online. The game plan almost worked as they got off to a great start. They had a decent lead early in the game, however their push at 24 minutes with an Aegis was executed very poorly, which resulted in Fnatic getting a surge of momentum that they desperately needed. A few minutes later, Fnatic was able to find a few crucial pickoffs, especially Draw Ranger solo killing a Shadow Fiend near a Dire Seeker shop, which instantly allowed Fnatic to push high ground. And with 3 people dead with no buyback on NaVi's side, they quickly lost their middle Rex. And at this point in the game, NaVi's hero mostly bought early game items to fight, as their game plan was based around winning fights early and fast pushes with Lycan and Ethereum. So none of them really itemized for the late game, and with them not winning fights anymore, it was hard for them to come back since they didn't really plan to go late, and so eventually Fnatic took game 1 in 41 minutes. For the second game, the entire game basically came down to 2 Roshan fights. Fnatic picked the Dazzle Husker combos, so I think it was pretty important for them to get ahead and get Roshan as early as possible. As you saw a few seconds earlier, Kling's still, I guess, what we call a tactical feat, just so Invoker and Witch Doctor will be occupied. As NaVi went to disrupt Fnatic's sneak Roshan attempt, which turned out very successfully for them since they were able to kill both the Huskar and the Dazzle in the Chronosphere. And Fnatic tried to salvage the situation by getting a kill on Dandy, however Seneco's great spell usage allowed NaVi to retreat without any casualties. And interesting to note here is Mushi was playing the Invoker this game, which is pretty unheard of, since I think he was notoriously for not being able to play the hero, and sadly for him, his performance this game was not very good. At 20 minutes, Fnatic tried to go for the Roshan once again, since it is a crucial part of the game plan. However, it was foiled by NaVi again. After these 2 Roshan attempts, Fnatic was just too far behind, and Huskar is not a hero that can play from a deficit. Therefore, NaVi was able to tie the series 1-1. In the final game of the series, this time it was NaVi who decided to go for the Huskar, and they showed Fnatic how it's done. NaVi dominated him from the very beginning, and since Fnatic didn't really draft any hard counter to the Huskar, once NaVi began to snowball with the Huskar, there was actually nothing Fnatic could do to kill him. And Fnatic had no choice but to call GG at only 13 minutes into the final game, which means NaVi was able to take the very first series of this tournament 2-1. For the second series, we have Friends versus Digital Chaos. Once again, Team Friends is basically the ex-Virtus Pro players who was dropped by the organization shortly after TI6 qualifiers. And for the first game, DC was able to get an early lead, and at 21 minutes, Friends felt like they had to go for a sneak Roshan in order to come back into the game, which, as you will see here, it went disastrous for them. Winter was able to get off a perfect ult, followed by the Invoker combo, and after this point, it was basically GG for Friends. They were behind before, but now they were set back even further. I mean, the game still went on for a while, but DC didn't really give Friends much of a room for a comeback, as they took game 1 by 37 minutes. In the second game, I think it once again came down to a fight that decided the game. First off, the anti-mage had a great start to the game, and he had Vanguard Tread's Battle Fairy at 60 minutes. And once he got his Battle Fairy, he skyrocketed in net worth ahead of everyone else. So Friends tried to find some pickoffs and force the team fights. However, the Tinker's lack of farm means their damage output was not enough in team fights. And once the anti-mage came to help his teammates, Friends actually had no answer for him at all. The Mana Void here by Resolution destroyed the Radiant side, and with that, DC was able to take a convincing 2-0 victory over Friends as they advanced to the next round. In the third series, we have CDECY versus EG. Most people probably would have thought EG would cruise over CDECY, however, CDECY actually made the game somewhat interesting. Well, for the first 20 minutes at least. In the first game, CDCY actually had a great early game. They even had a small lead until 24 minutes, where EG proved their lineup's vision game was way too strong. They scouted out CDCY's location, and EG was able to pick up 2 support heroes instantly, and then almost fully team-wiped CDCY. EG took their freshly bought gem and swung the game hugely into their favor. At 32 minutes, with the game fully in their control, EG decided to push CDCY's high ground, and Inflame on the Dragon Knight made some really questionable decisions at this point in the game. As you can see by the CD on his TP, he cancelled his TP back to base, just to form a dire jungle camp to finish off his Shadow Blade. So while EG was aggressively pushing into the Radiant high ground, as you can see by the blue dot on the minimap, he was slowly walking back to the base with his Shadow Blade being delivered to him. I suppose his thought process was that since he didn't have the Dragon form, he won't contribute much to the base defense. But I mean, even then, his Dragon Breath was still useful since their lineup lacked wave clear to slow down the push. Without Dragon Knight, it was all on the Slug to try and delay EG until the DK is back. But without his ult, the Slug died instantly. And the Dragon Knight continued his questionable decision making as he went in 1u5 to kill an Aegis Mirana. I mean, I guess the game was most likely over even if he did come back to defend, but his decision making just showed how tilted and lost he was this game. And as a captain for CDCY, that doesn't seem like a good quality to have. Anyways, shortly after, CDCY caught GG as EG took game number 1. For the second game, once again CDCY looked pretty good for the early game, but just like their first game, their mid-game execution cost them the game. The game was pretty close at this point, so CDCY tried to go for a smoke to find some pickoffs, but Zai's quick reaction on Shadow Demon prevented the Dazzle from coming out. As Jug went in for the Omni Slash, CDCY used the bench swap and the Dazzle Grave just to save the support bench. Not to mention their position at this point was horrible. With Huskar all by himself on the side, he was easy picking for the EG. With both Grave and swap being used on the bench, there was no save where they only carry Huskar. So they just watched their carry fall and they soon fall one by one after. There are definitely some flaws in CDCY's play, however, they did show some potential just like they always have in the Chinese scene. They're known for upsetting the best teams, but they're also known for losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to. After their showing at 9 Championship, I actually thought CDCY could potentially cause an upset at this tournament. But sadly their performance today wasn't very good, and EG took the series 2-0 and moved on as CDCY dropped to lower bracket. And the last series of day 1 was between Complexity and Team Secret. In game 1, we once again see a Drought Ranger lineup, and it once again plays out just like how you always see Drought Ranger lineup go when it works out. And when they hit a certain timing, they can just go group up and push you down. And unless the opposing team has a huge advantage, it's actually very difficult to slow down this push. Even though the Complexity lineup was able to burst down the RTZ Mirana, EE's Drought and Puppy's Enchantress was going ham onto the rest of Complexity. I mean, just look at this damage output, and this is a 4 position Enchantress with only 2 items by the way. At this point, with the Tiny dying back, game 1 was easily in the bag for Secret as they took a quick 1-0 lead. Game 2 had a very interesting ending. The most early game went both ways for the most part. Even though the Secret had a huge teamfight heroes such as Elder Titan and Tidehunter, they were reluctant on taking straight on fights against Complexity. So the Morphling instead chose to do some Rad Doto, which actually worked out well for them as they were able to get the Mega Creeps at this point. However, finally Complexity had enough. After they got a pick off on the Ursa, they decided to go straight for the throne. This was an all-in attempt by Complexity since they already got Mega Creep. That means if they don't kill the throne right here, the game was pretty much over for them. However, the Morphling was too farmed. He smartly went for Dazzle to either snipe him or make him waste his Grave. And once he used it, there was no save for the Huskar, and Morphling just finished off the Huskar's remaining health. With Huskar dead, Weaver tried his best to damage the throne, however he only got it down to half health before he died himself. Secret then proceeded to push with the Mega Creeps as they took the series 2-0, moving on to the next round. For more Rat Dodo action, you can check out my highlights for this game to see how the game got to this point. And with that, this concludes the Day 1 recap for the Starladder iLeague Season 2. Once again, sorry for the delay on this episode. The Day 2 recap will be uploaded shortly after. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed my content, please like my video and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.